Netanyahu moves to the Defense Ministry operations room after the Yemen airport evacuation alert. The Israeli Security Cabinet backs expanded Gaza offensive and plans to seize the territory. And the Kremlin confirms May 8th to the 10th as a ceasefire in Ukraine and warns of response to attacks. You're watching Q News, and this is our first news bulletin. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has relocated to the Defense Ministry's operations room following an evacuation warning near Sana'a International Airport in Yemen. Israeli Occupation Army radio confirmed plans for a strike on the airport today, marking what would be Israel's first attack on that site. Israeli media, citing security sources, reported that the operation could involve missiles launched from sea or air. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has overseen a military operation targeting Houthi positions in Yemen. The Israeli occupation military confirmed it carried out airstrikes on Hodeidah port and nearby areas, claiming to have hit what it described as Houthi terrorist infrastructure. The strikes follow a missile launched by the Houthi group that landed near Israel's main international airport. Israeli warplanes have carried out a series of airstrikes on Yemen's Hodeidah province, killing at least 2 people and injuring 42 others. The attacks targeted key infrastructure, including the port, airport, a cement factory, a military position northeast of the city. Houthi-controlled media reported a total of 48 airstrikes across the Red Sea province. The escalation follows a Houthi missile strike near Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion airport that left 8 people wounded. Among the victims in Hodeidah were factory workers and residents from the nearby Bajil district. And for the analysis, we are heading to Rehem Mursi in our newsroom. Rehem.
Thank you, Hani. To help us unpack the unfolding situation, we're joined from Cairo by the journalist and researcher Heb Omar. Welcome, sir, to joining us here on Q News. Sir, firstly, let's start off by asking, what are the potential military and geopolitical implications of Israel's first strike on the Sana'a International Airport, in addition to obviously the port and a cement factory? How might this affect regional stability, and why the targeting of civilian infrastructure?
Thanks to you and your audiences, and thanks for having me. Prime Minister of Israel Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to change the equation in the region and pre the visit of Donald Trump to the Gulf area, specifically Saudi Arabia and UAE, along with Qatar. Therefore, Netanyahu had the approval of USA to join the American military actions that started for the last 2 months and joined lately by Britain. And the news saying that Israel is before trilateral aggressions against Yemen. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel, is trying to show himself that he is the strongest man, that who is capable to retaliate the hits by the Houthis targeting Ben Gurion airport, by targeting the Sana'a airport. The game is mainly the part of the American-Iranian talks in Muscat, Geneva and Rome. as the Israeli strike on the Sana'a airport, as you've already said in your bulletin news, by evacuating to the airport of Sana'a by the Houthis, so they have information of the strikes. So we are before a new chapter of the American-Iranian game, where Israel is striking sites really affiliated to Iran to inform them previously along with Israel. So the victim is neither Israel or Iran, by the Arab world. It's the Lebanon and Syria and the Palestinian cause being handed over to the creative case and the new American Middle East project to circles of the collapsing of the national state and the domination of the extremist groups in the region. This is only the main goal. So not the game is between Israel and Iran, or all what we see is an American arrangement of to continue the decrease in the Middle East and in the continuation of non-establishment of the national armies and states, and not to let the people to invest in Yemen, as it is a very rich that has the natural and human resources. Yet Yemen, since the independence, in a state of poverty and wars. Why? Is it for the reasons inside Yemen? Yemen is a state of civilizations, but the main reason is what we see now is regional dimensions in the account of Yemen. Either Cold War, or today is in a fabricated conflict between Iran and Israel, and the victim is the Yemeni citizens, and today is Sana'a's airport.
Well, as you said, sir, that the evacuation warnings were quite significant near the airport. What does this actually reveal about the level of threat that Israel perceives in the region, and what does this mean for the military operations? Are we going to see an expansion in this?
Truly, Israel, as you've already started in your introduction, is pursued to invent new regional equations, and before the visit of Trump to the region, supposedly Trump, in his mindset that is trying to show himself that he's different from the previous administration, and he is the more successful one. He pursued to show himself that he's a peacemaker in the regions, and therefore he's effortlessly, Trump will pursue to the end of the line in the Middle East for the offensive in Gaza, along with the detainees file of Israelis captives in the hands of Hamas, and Netanyahu is specifically racing the time before this visit, as the end of the war means the end of Netanyahu. Upon the end of this war in the Gaza and Tel Aviv to receive the last captives, detainees, either alive or dead, this is the end of Netanyahu's politically, and will hand over his resignation according to the withdrawal of the coalition in the government, and Israel heading to new elections, and Netanyahu will go in prison in light of the indictments. Is it related of money laundering or serving non-Israeli lobbies, and will be held accountable for what is called the Israeli failure in confronting the war started in October 7, 2023. So Netanyahu is trying to save his neck before anything else and achieving new equations in the Middle East, in the Gaza Strip, before the Trump's visit to Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, UAE, this month.
Well, sir, since you've brought up, the other Arab countries, how can this military strike on the airport influence Israel's relationship with neighboring Arab states and the broader international community in general?
The Abraham Accord has nothing to do with the Israeli aggression on Yemen or what are the Yemeni operations by the Houthis against Israel. In the contrary, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the UAE both were damaged largely by the terrorism of Al-Houthis. And when Saudi Arabia responded, defending himself, all the West tried to punish Saudi of what they did in self-defense, and the attempt to deter these Houthis missiles that hit secret posts in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in Mecca and in Medina, and even out of the secret holy places in Zahran and Jeddah and Riyadh and UAE. They striked Abu Dhabi, and the purpose is absolute Iranian desire to hit the oil purses and the port of Ali in UAE. This is the goals of Houthis, is absolutely Iranian goal. Unfortunately, the Iranian agenda and the Houthis never gain but artificial, but only they get now the aggression by Israel, America and Britain. So the Israeli-Arab relations away of the strikes that's taking place in Yemen, lacking of coordination, and Israel is moving unilaterally, and the damaged Arab countries are trying nobly to prevent such aggression and trying to reaching for a ceasefire, as these countries have the enough political awareness as what's happening now is fooling a specific organization in Yemen, but it might lead to the scattered Yemen and lead to the 1,000-nurse Yemeni scenario, or to spread the chaos that could create a terrorist organization in Yemen in the surface through the dissemination of the military operation inside Yemen.
Well, sir, earlier you had spoken about, the court troubles that Netanyahu is facing, and a bit about the military objectives of the Israelis. How might this attack fit into the broader military objectives in the region, and what are the potential consequences for future diplomatic negotiations and ceasefire efforts? Do you think this is a way to avoid continuing to discuss a ceasefire?
With respect to that matter, the only way is to listen to the reasoned voice in the Middle East, which is the Egyptian voice. Through Egyptian efforts to end the chaos in the region, that is going to ultimately prevail. Even if they try to confront Egyptian efforts in mediation, all these parties later on will return once again to achieve what Egypt talked about. Egypt only pursued the interests of the region, the calm in the region, and along with the economic interests in the region. So what's taking place right now is disruptive to all the efforts of the relevant parties in the Middle East. So there is no other choice but the Egyptian vision in reaching a ceasefire not only in Gaza Strip but in Yemen, Lebanon and Syria, and in any region in the Middle East.
Unfortunately, sir, we're out of time for this segment. We'll end it there on the thought that Egypt will be the option for a ceasefire in the region. From Cairo, that was a journalist and researcher, Ihab Omar. Thank you for joining us here on Qnews. Thank you for joining us. And now we go back to Hani Saif in our studio.
Thank you, Raham. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move to the latest developments in Gaza. Israel's Security Cabinet has unanimously approved an expanded military offensive in Gaza, with plans to seize Palestinian territory and occupy the Strip. The operation aims to force Palestinians into southern Gaza, with Israeli officials anticipating months of intense fighting. As the offensive intensifies, Palestinian civilians face ongoing destruction, starvation, and a lack of humanitarian aid, which Israel continues to block. The Israeli government is awaiting a visit from U.S. President Donald Trump, which could impact future developments in the region. U.S. President Donald Trump has reiterated his commitment to providing humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza as civilians continue to face severe shortages. Speaking from the Oval Office, Trump said the United States is working to ensure food reaches people in need, blaming Hamas for worsening the crisis by seizing aid supplies. He described residents of Gaza as suffering under Hamas's rule, but emphasized that the U.S. remains determined to support them. President Trump did not address reports of an expanded Israeli military operation in Gaza. U.S. President Donald Trump's special Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, has reaffirmed Washington's commitment to promoting peace and prosperity for Israel, speaking ahead of Trump's upcoming visit to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. Witkoff said the administration is working tirelessly to ensure that future celebrations reflect peace, unity, and progress in the region. He also pointed to ongoing U.S. efforts, including humanitarian aid for Gaza and the expansion of the Abraham Accords, with major announcements expected soon on normalizing ties between Israel and Arab states. U.S. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib has accused the United States of being complicit in what she described as genocide in Gaza, saying Washington is enabling Israeli actions through continued support. In a statement posted on X, Tlaib condemned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's reported plans to forcibly expel Palestinians and annex Gaza. She said the move amounts to ethnic cleansing. Tlaib, the first Palestinian-American woman in Congress, added that the announcement follows over 2 months of Israel blocking humanitarian aid to Gaza. Re-elected in November, Tlaib called on the U.S. to end its role in backing what she described as grave human rights violations. China has expressed strong opposition to Israel's military actions in Gaza, particularly its plans to displace Palestinians in the enclave. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian reiterated China's concern over the ongoing conflict, calling for the effective implementation of a ceasefire agreement by all parties involved. China recently participated in the International Court of Justice's hearings on Israel's obligations, where Ma Jinmin, China's representative, emphasized that Israel is legally required to allow humanitarian assistance to Gaza when the population's needs are unmet. Moving on, the Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has met with the Egyptian ambassador to Lebanon, Ala Musa, at the Grand Serail. Ambassador Musa discussed several key issues, primarily focusing on the bilateral relations between Egypt and Lebanon. Ambassador Musa is preparing for a meeting of the Joint High Committee to be chaired by both countries' prime ministers and likely to take place in Cairo within the next 2 months. He also pointed to the upcoming Arab Summit in Baghdad on May 17th as a key opportunity for regional dialogue and cooperation, expressing hope for productive discussions to address shared challenges. The Kremlin has confirmed that Russian forces will observe a ceasefire in Ukraine from May 8th to the 10th, in line with President Vladimir Putin's orders. Putin announced the three-day ceasefire on April 28th to mark the 80th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. However, the Kremlin stated that Russian forces would respond if Ukrainian troops attempted to strike Russian positions during this period. The ceasefire will coincide with May 9th, when Putin will host international leaders, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, at Moscow's Red Square. Russia has carried out a mass drone attack on Ukraine's second-largest city, Kharkiv, targeting 4 neighborhoods and sparking a fire that injured 2 people. According to Mayor Ihor Terekhov, Russia launched 20 Shahid attack drones overnight, targeting the Zvezhenskys, Kivesky and Kholodonevsky districts of the city. A private house, a restaurant, and numerous cars across Kharkiv also caught fire. All 4 of Moscow's major airports were reportedly closed for hours after Ukraine launched a second consecutive night of drone attacks against the Russian capital. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin said that Russian air defenses intercepted 19 drones flying towards the city from different directions. The Russian officials said some debris had landed on highways leading into the city, but that no casualties were reported. The attack comes ahead of planned celebrations in Moscow to commemorate the end of World War II. Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to attend the Victory Day event. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order that aims to reduce the time it takes to approve pharmaceutical plants in the country as part of new regulations to encourage domestic manufacturing. Trump signed the order during an event in the Oval Office in which he also told reporters he would make announcements in the coming weeks on the cost of drugs as well as pharmaceutical tariffs. Last month, the Trump administration launched probes into imports of pharmaceuticals and semiconductors as it looks to impose tariffs on both sectors on grounds that extensive reliance on foreign production of medicine and chips is a national security threat. On Monday, Trump also signed an order that bans federal funding for gain-of-function research that typically enhances pathogens.
It streamlines the permitting processes that go into.
These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of today's main stories. Netanyahu moves to Defense Ministry Operations Room after the Yemen airport evacuation alert. Israeli Security Cabinet backs expanded Gaza offensive and plans to seize territory. And the Kremlin confirms May 8th to the 10th a ceasefire in Ukraine and warns of response to attacks. This concludes our news bulletin for now, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Q News EGY to stay informed. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for watching.